And I assume they checked online that they can, I mean, we heard them over there, but I want to make sure that the feedback online's good.
Yeah, that we've tested it with people in other parts of the building.
Okay, good. All right, good morning, everyone. Is that okay? Should I move it closer? Is it fine? The volume? Okay, good. For those of you online, we have a new mic system. So if there's any hiccups, be patient with us. I don't have anything for my report, but I want to ask, are there any general housekeeping items, questions? I think there was a question on one of our consent items.
Got it taken care of.
Okay, perfect. Any questions about the agenda? Perfect. Director Wong.
Madam President, Commissioners, good morning. A couple things I'd like to share with you. First off, yesterday afternoon, we had an incredibly successful ACHD Eagle business meeting in Eagle to discuss our upcoming projects on Old State and Eagle. This was the second touch point that our communications team and our project manager had with the businesses, as prior they had visited every business in Eagle to just give them a cursory update as to what was happening, when, and introduce themselves across the board. Yesterday was a session where many businesses were in attendance, as was Commissioner Gold, and it was absolutely a huge success across the board. Commissioner Gold, I want to thank you again. Very positive feedback on your interaction with all the businesses. They were very, very impressed across the board. Next meeting will be in January when we open the bid, and we'll be back out to Eagle, sharing all the insights we have at that time, how the project will unfold, and such. But it was just absolutely great across the board. Last night, I received a phone call from the Eagle mayor, and he had a request that our team will be looking into. And the request was, as you all know, there's a current project going on in downtown Eagle. ESI is one of the major contractors and such across that. But what the mayor wanted to know, if there was any type of possibility that we might enter into a constructive development agreement, cooperative development agreement with the developer and the city and us to potentially, if the developer wants to go down this path, to put in some of the more permanent infrastructure around their buildings so that when we come in, and we don't have to rip everything out as a temporary aspect and then not negatively impact the business again. I think there's a great potential for success on this. So our plans and projects will be reaching out to the city and to the developer in the next couple of weeks to sit down and have just a face-to-face to say, what are your thoughts? What is it you might be willing to do? Because as you know, we can't force the developer and such, but if the developer, who I believe has made that offer, I think we should advantage that, again, to hopefully least impact the folks in Eagle. So very premature at this point in time. We'll keep you posted on that meeting. And Commissioner Gold, I know it's your area, so I'm sure that we'll make sure you know and such going forward. But again, very, very successful and a lot of positive comments across the board. I understand the mayor had his mayor's coffee this morning and was also very complimentary and positive about yesterday's meeting. We continue to review the DEQ proposed lease for this, and there's one key item that we really need to have the commissioners focus on or perspective on in the near future, and that is a commission room upstairs or a commission room auditorium being built next to the building. We've run the numbers, and we've sat down with and we'll present this to all of you, of course. We've run the numbers, and we truly believe that at this point it is in ACHD's best interest and your best interest to actually have the landlord build a new facility next to the structure. The cost, as we did the numbers for the next 25 years, would be about $100,000 more annually over time. And at the end, when it's all said and done, it's basically a wash when it's all said and done. So we'll be bringing you those specifics in the very near future, and then be asking you to give us the green light or not with that, and then we can finalize all the discussion points we're having with the landowner at this point in time. But right now, very positive. Things are moving forward, and I think we'll be very successful in that. But that'll be your determination as to which path you'd like to go with. Later today at 2 o'clock, I'm meeting with ITD's operational leadership, sort of a pop-up meeting, to be briefed on what they're calling their statewide traffic study of traffic signals on state highways as assessing operations and enhance overall mobility. I don't know what that means yet, but I do have several of our top traffic engineers going with me on this, and it was very nice of them to at least give an offer out to have us take a look at what they're thinking. And of course, I'll come back to the commission this week and give you a synopsis of what was said during that session. Now, commissioners, as you know, we're in a new FY. We have the initial evaluation audit went very, very well, as we understand it. Nobody's been called in yet to say, what the heck. This will continue here in the very near future with the main audit coming in mid-November, and we'll keep you posted. But starting in FY, I just wanted to share with you that right now we have 22 new development applications that are under review with a 6-day turnaround focus, which I think is absolutely great. We have 13 new construction plan submittals with a 46-day turnaround, which again, as you recall, that used to be 90 to 100 days going forward. So they're doing a great job. We have already issued 71 permits and reviewed 77 traffic control plans. ACHD signal maintenance or signal operations maintains a 99% in signal rate, which is absolutely tremendous. And we replaced 105 signs already last week through Ada County. Fleet service rate is 97.4% for 425 vehicles, and we are ready for winter operations, which you're going to hear about later today in the work sessions. Then finally, commissioners, I'd like to share again with you that the annual ACHD Chili Cook-Off was a huge success across the board, and I'm proud to share with you that the one and only Secretary of the Board placed in the top 3 for chili operations and such. So, commissioners, that's my report for you today. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Director. Commissioners, any questions? All right, thank you, sir. We've wrapped up a little bit early, but we'll be at ease until noon. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's now 12 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone in person and online. Please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. If we do not have any of those requests, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney,
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we do not have any regular agenda items at this time, so we will move right into public communications. Is there anyone in person or online that would like to address the commission at this time?
Yes, we have Mr. Doug Foote.
Okay, welcome, Doug. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. My name is Doug Foote, live at 656 Pitkin Lane off Hatchery near Eagle Island State Park. I've got two pictures. I'd like to, you can keep these. Reason I'm here today has to do with the construction of the planned construction of the Idaho Parks and Rec. They want to expand Eagle Island State Park and put it on RV park and another pond, like they need another pond. And it boils down to the fact that ACHD wants to block the new entrance off of Highway 44 and make that only available to construction traffic, which is kind of ridiculous because we deal with construction trucks all the time, every day, in all of the different, even the subdivisions, all over the valley. If you can't drive with those construction trucks around, you shouldn't be on the road. They want to reopen Hatchery entrance, which has been closed for 7.5 years, to the road traffic for the normal public to come into Eagle Island State Park. The only way to get onto Eagle Island and 125 homes, and I live in one of the mobile home parks, been there over 15 years, is Linder Road. The pictures I've sent you were taken a couple of days ago, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That is the average traffic during the day on Linder. Right now, that road is handling over 10 times the number of cars that should be on Linder Road as it was originally designed. It's only 2-lane. There's no stoplight for 2.5 miles from Highway 44 at the north to Shindon at the south. To pull out will take, on the average, between 3 and 5 minutes per vehicle to get off of Hatchery onto Linder. That is the only way off of Eagle Island. Now you want to open that gate up and let the general public coming in and out try to get into Eagle Island State Park and then leave. If it is as it was many years ago, that means with the current traffic load on Linder, the average time to get out per vehicle will be 5 to 10 minutes per car. And when you get 200 cars lined up all the way back to the entrance to Eagle Island State Park, the old entrance, basically you're now trapped. You can't get out, you can't get in. We can make a left turn or a right turn and get in right now thanks to a left turn lane. But to get out, you take your life in your hands, whether you're going north or south makes no difference. That is right now before they open that gate up. And this is basically, nobody pays any attention to the people that live there. Nobody's looking at what's going on. They don't monitor the traffic flow. Before they closed that gate 7.5 years ago, the average traffic load, according to John Wasson, I believe it is, was 1,600 cars per day on Hatchery. Now the population in this area has gone up like a skyrocket. So the average time now to get in and out has gone from maybe a minute to several minutes per vehicle. I've sat in traffic if I was the fifth car in line and to wait up to 10 minutes to get out onto Linder. We have requested and begged and pleaded for years to put in a traffic light at Hatchery and Linder as what is called a demand light. That is, the light stays green for Linder until somebody wants to get out. Then it turns red, you get out, and here we go. Traffic opens up. I've been told there is no such thing. I said the demand light exists at Eagle Island Parkway and Highway 44. It's been there for 7.5 years. The traffic stays green on Highway 44 until somebody needs to leave Eagle Island State Park or make a left turn north or south on Highway 44. The light then stops the traffic on 44 and we can make the turn or get out. I've been told over and over and over they refuse to do this. If this plan of yours goes through, we will not be able to, many times during the day, we will not be able to get emergency vehicles in. That's fire and paramedics will not be able to get in. The only other way onto Eagle Island is also off Linder, just north of the South Channel Bridge, which is also, it's an artesian that connects back up to Hatchery. So Linder is our only access for 125 homes. And you want to close that down by diverting the traffic to go into Eagle Island State Park for a solid year. You're going to shut us down. You're going to lock us down. We won't be able to get in or out unless it's 11 o'clock at night or 4:30 in the morning. That's our statement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please change the route. Go back to what it was.
Okay, thank you, sir. We can't, the thing with public communications, we can't make a decision at
I
this point.
understand.
So thank you for coming, but I think we do have some things in the works at this time. Would it be helpful if we had shared some
Please.
ideas that we have? Okay. Director, do you mind if staff come up and,
You want me to step down? I can.
yeah, that'd be great.
Thank
Thank you.
Madam President, Commissioners, again, truly appreciate Mr. Foot's concern, as we do with all citizens. We are actually working the intersection light project going forward. And secondly, this is really not an ACHD project, it's an ITD project. That being said, as you know, I'm meeting with the ITD operations team later today. I'm more than happy to ensure they understand the concerns that Mr. Foot and other citizens have brought forward, if that's acceptable to all of you.
Thanks, Director.
Okay.
Mr. Foot, thanks for coming, and let's keep the communications channels open so we can be an advocate for coming up with a solution. Thank you, sir. Is there,
Well, Mr. Alan Lynch also signed up for the same.
oh, perfect. Welcome, Mr. Lynch. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Alan Lynch, 797 Dolson Lane, and that's on the corner of Hatchery and Dolson. And quick background about me, I have analysis abilities through all the computer work I've done over years, so I can see what's going on. I follow patterns. Everything that Mr. Foot just said, I agree with. And the solution, and I didn't hear what the other gentleman said, would be a light at that corner of Hatchery and Linder. What I have seen in the past is the traffic patterns over on Park, for the purpose of knowing what kind of traffic is in there. Real light during the day comparatively, and it loads up starting around 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon. So that means construction time, 7 to 3 was the usual normal time. It can be accommodated, but we're also sharing the road, which is normal, which is what he said, over the county. In fact, the whole state does the same thing. The problem I see is we'll get locked in, and if there's a lot of traffic coming out, it will force a ton of time. An example would be when they leave for a track meet that comes along during the fall as a cross country, they will back up traffic clear back to the normal gate. But they let them in because it's special traffic. That's what they did this year, and they've done for several years. but that's even after they closed the original gate. But when you were letting new people in, it would back clear up to Hatchery and all the way around to the corner. So there's a ton of traffic. That's all I'm trying to support. The fact that the solution would be a light and then change the entire traffic pattern. And I'm sure the rest of the group, if we asked for it, if we had to do a petition to help you understand how the ramification of it in depth, we can do that. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. The pictures also really help, so I appreciate you both coming in those
I did
pictures.
take those and, having come around the corner, the first picture, was big. The picture taken was right at the top end where coming off of 44 onto Linder at 5-ish, and then goes all the way up the hill, if you probably noticed it on the pictures. Then when we got to the turn lane, it's the same kind of thing. So you can see it's sitting there at the turn lane. So it's the same time frame, but it was packed both directions.
Okay.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, Ms. Stacy?
Everyone else is for the work session, so I believe.
I just wanna, so what I'm gonna do, because again, before we move off and adjourn the meeting, I'm gonna have the neighborhood association leadership be invited to come participate in our work session on the Warm Springs speed limit. But if you're a member of the neighborhood and not currently in the auditorium right now, I would invite you to speak up at public communications, which is this moment right now. So is there anyone online, Stacy, that has indicated they want to talk about that piece? Because I would invite them to speak on public communications, just so we can manage the work session a little bit easier.
All right. Is there anybody? You can go ahead and start to speak or raise your hand. If there's anybody online?
Hi, my name is Erin. I was going to give a few comments.
Welcome, Erin. Can you state your name and address for the record?
Sure, my name is Erin Barker and I'm at 3192 South Barnside Way. Oh, go ahead.
Perfect, go for it.
Sure, yeah, so I just was, I wanted to speak in support of lowering the speed limit from 40 miles an hour to 35 miles per hour on that section of Warm Springs. You know, I live in the neighborhood with my two kids, and I actually grew up about a mile away. So I've sort of seen the development and the changes to where this road really is a section used by folks who kind of, you know, live in the area. And I guess one of my first thoughts is just that the change at night, I think, was to protect wildlife for that 35 miles per hour. And it just seems a little bit arbitrary to have a lower speed to protect wildlife when we have, you know, 2 or 3 schools in the area, which sort of borders neighborhoods and other folks that are out. So just as a matter of safety and to be consistent with sort of that wildlife protection idea, it seems to make sense to lower it to 35. And I did some research, you know, I didn't know if there were certain standards that are required or if it's just sort of opinion and this is what we want, this is what our neighbors want. But I noted that on the Road Wizard, the ACHD had some questions, you know, where there was a questions about sections in Meridian, where part of the road between like McMillan and Eustick was 40 and lowered to 35. And the Road Wizard answers were exactly that. It was, there are many schools in the area. And so that's what we're expressing today too. So I'm in support of lowering that speed limit.
Thanks, Erin. Is there anyone else online? Okay, perfect. Well, thanks, Stacy. With that, the meeting is adjourned. We will move right along into our post-commission agenda, and we have 6 items on there, but we'll kick things off with our Warm Springs speed limits discussion, and we'll have Ryan Head give a presentation really quick, and then I'll invite leadership from the Neighborhood Association to respond. Welcome, Ryan.
Madam President, Commission, thank you. For the record, Ryan Head, Deputy Director of Development and Technical Services. I'm here today to present on the Warm Springs Avenue speed limit request from the neighborhood. I'm going to give you a brief of what that is and then talk about what staff's actions have been and what staff's recommendation is with regards to this request. Just for a brief reminder, state law gives the authority to the commission to set speed limits. There really are generally two ways in which you determine a speed limit. One is through a traffic study, and another is looking at the context in which a project is set up. And so what we're going to give you is our recommendation based on those two areas, but ultimately that decision lies with you. So first of all, staff has received a request from the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association with regards to lowering the speed limit to 35 miles per hour through the entire stretch of Warm Springs Avenue. Just for context, there's, as you can see here, there's sections that are 35, there's sections that are 40. The eastern section actually is one of our unique time limited speed limits, in that during the day it's 40, at night it's 35. So that's how that request is set up. And so because the land use context is a little bit different between the western section and the eastern section, I'll walk you through each of those individually. The western segment is what's also known as the bypass, or what was built as a bypass for Park Center, where Park Center comes in and Warm Springs then goes around what was going to be developed. In this area, as was previously recognized last week, there's an elementary school that is being built and is expected to open in the near future. Along this section, there will be a 25-mile-per-hour school zone connected with that school when that opens. You also have adjacent to this two parks on the south side of Warm Springs Avenue, one Barber Park and the other Marianne Williams Park. There's senior living areas, there's Greenbelt on the south side, so there's definitely opportunity and desire for people to cross the road here. When this was originally set at 40 miles an hour, the bypass had just been built. Development was still primarily north of Park Center in this section. Really, the intent of setting it at 40 was to encourage people to use it as opposed to using the existing Park Center, so that as that developed out, that would become more of a neighborhood street. Now it's developed out, it has a number of roundabouts, it's signed at 25 miles per hour and seems to be working there. With the context and the changes that have been made as development has moved further and further south here, staff is in agreement that it's appropriate to change the speed limit. And based on the discussion last week, staff did direct, and it has been changed to 35 miles per hour in this section. The eastern sections got a little bit different context. So it's 35 miles per hour to just east of East Junior High. Really, that's, if for context, this is around where the Parks and Rec, as well as the Shakespeare Festival area is in this area. The Greenbelt continues on the south side of the road and then breaks away from Warm Springs Avenue here. For the most part, the development has stayed on the north side of the road, north and east side of the road. There is one section right here where there is development on the west side of the road. Recently, ACHD has built a pedestrian crossing at this location and around this location here. Ultimately, not a lot has changed besides some more houses and these pedestrian crossings since this was a state highway. It really was a state highway, a wide right-of-way. I think it's approximately 80 feet through this entire area. So not a lot has changed since that time. We have been working with the neighborhood. They have been very interested and came to the commission asking for this to be changed from an arterial to a collector. The commission agreed to that. So now there's a collector. As a result, through the development process, we've been working with what is the Woven subdivision, which is located there where that arrow's pointing, to increase the amount of landscaping closer to the road. We're allowing it closer than anywhere else we've allowed, as well as allowing street trees in that section closer to the roadway. Really, the intent of this is to increase the amount of friction, really trying to mitigate the speeds. But really, when you're talking about traffic calming, you're trying to bring people to the speed limit. That's really your goal, is to avoid speeding. Current studies show that the average speed in this section is 41 miles per hour. The 85th percentile is closer to 45, 46. And according to the studies that have been done, generally, the MUTCD recommends that you set the speed limit within 5 miles per hour of the 85th percentile. But ultimately, so we're at the lower end of what that would recommend with 40 miles per hour. Really, we think that there's opportunity for this area to continue to evolve and develop. One, we would, in talking with some of the neighborhood representatives, recommendation would be to work with the HOAs and increase the amount of landscaping that is there. Most of the landscaping has been placed on the backside of sidewalks and pathways. ACHD would be very open to license agreements and conversations with those HOAs for the placement of additional landscaping closer to the roadway. This has that, again, that narrowing of the vision there. Additionally, we've been told that there's potential for additional development in this area here as individuals decide to sell that off. Down in this southern section, the city of Boise has a planned park, and there's space here, including an old way station here that is within ACHD's right of way, that we would encourage them to consider and use in that time frame. That said, really, here staff does not necessarily agree that just changing the speed limit is going to make the difference. And so we do believe that there would be an appropriate time in the future as these things continue to develop, as the neighborhood works to bring some of that landscaping in closer and try and address that it would be a practical and reasonable request at that time. But at this point, staff is not necessarily recommending that this section be changed now. So with that, Commission, I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Ryan. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
thank you. Ryan, are there any, among the changes to this eastern section of Warm Springs that we've been talking about that are currently being considered, is it anything other than landscaping changes that are seriously being considered at this point?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, or Commissioner McKinney, pick one. We'll go with that. At this point in time, no. Really, when you have there are no changes ultimately planned for this section of roadway. The commission has previously agreed through the master street map that it would be no more than 3 lanes. As such, at this point in time, and based on the way the corridor has developed, staff has not recommended or proposed in the CIP a project to come out and build something really the road works well as it currently sits for vehicles. I'll put it that way. You do have the infrastructure there, the green belt close, which works for the bikes and pedestrians and really takes them off of that roadway. Now, not everyone chooses that path. We do have completed sidewalk through this section, through much of this section on the north and east side where the development is. That said, it's not necessarily your fully built out road like you would expect in the middle of the city on an arterial roadway, but ultimately it's a collector road, and collectors are not, now that it is a collector roadway, it wouldn't be necessarily as eligible as a CIP project under our current ordinance. So from that perspective, we would rely on development to make the recommendation. When it comes to speed management, you don't necessarily, there aren't a lot of tools for a long straight road to really change that, especially one that's currently posted at 40 miles an hour. And ultimately, the speed management would be trying to get people to go that speed. Relatively, people are going that speed today. So I hope that answers your question.
Sure. Well, and how long of a segment are we talking about? That eastern portion from its connections?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I don't have, it's
more than 2 miles, isn't it?
It's in long distance, yes.
Okay. All right.
I don't have the exact time distance.
So Ryan, in summary, so you're not recommending the further east portion, but you are recommending the western portion.
Madam President, the action's already been taken and the
Yeah, right.
western
That's what I
portion's
want.
already
Exactly.
changed to 35 now.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to get clarification on. Okay,
So,
Commissioner Hanson.
Madam President and Ryan, so are there any other collectors in our jurisdiction with speed limits at 40?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, I don't know.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of arterials like Chinden and others at speed limits 35, but not, I haven't found any yet. The second is that you are actually recommending adjustments to this speed, but not until, I understand Boise City does something with another park. So there are attractors on the south side, the Greenbelt, the river, parks, access to those things. But the trigger would be to go to 35, the development of another park down at the far end near Highway 21, where sometime in the future the city will anticipates developing what is now just open space. Isn't that correct? They're recommending.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, we would recommend that we look at it at that time. We do believe that there is validity to the request if those things do develop out, as has been told to us. We think it would be more reasonable at the goal. When we set speed limits, we want people to also comply with them. And absent a major change in the enforcement side of things, there's little out there now, and this is what I'm trying to indicate in my presentation. There's little out there now that would encourage people to go those slower speeds.
So one last thing, in anticipation of the scoping that we are starting on the western segment of Warm Springs from Windsong to Avenue C, we lowered the speed limit. And so the scoping now is focused on what the ideal speed for that segment of Warm Springs is. The neighbor has made this a priority to request for us to scope the rest. And I got signals from staff, yeah, we can do that after we scope the western segment of Warm Springs. We'll scope the eastern segment of Warm Springs. And when I say eastern segment, I mean all the way from Starview to Highway 21. So that portion to be scoped. Although it wasn't actually written in as one of the reasons I couldn't support the 5-year work plan, because it wasn't written into it. Although I got assurances that it would be, that we would next scope that. Doesn't it make sense that if we're planning to scope, that we should scope it at the ideal speed based upon the neighborhood context that we want to achieve, rather than scope it to what it was as a original state highway?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, if you recall where we started, state law gives general guidance in terms of what is the appropriate tools you use in helping set speed limits. In looking at Warm Springs Avenue, you have an elementary school immediately adjacent to it. There is context in which it was appropriate to consider that speed limit change. Whether or not we were doing a concept study or not, I think it was appropriate to make that consideration. In this case, and as we looked at the western section, there's context that's appropriate to consider a speed limit change. I have no concerns if staff were to look at the future section and at the commission's direction to scope and plan for a 35-mile-an-hour roadway on the eastern section. my recommendation to you is that we put the signs up and change it when there's the appropriate context in place. That there are the other tools to encourage people to go the speed of 35 miles an hour. In my mind, that's a appropriate and logical way. Ultimately, the commission makes that decision.
Thanks, Ryan. So I think at this point, I'd like to invite the neighborhood up. So John or Rob, which of you would like to come up first, or both at the same time?
Rob Stark, Vice President of BVNA, 6865 East Warm Springs. Madam President, Commissioners, for years, BVNA has been advocating for changes to Warm Springs Avenue to make it safer and improve the quality of life in our neighborhood. In fact, BVNA, on the suggestion of Ryan Head, has started our own traffic calming project to install trees 16 feet from the pavement on both sides of Warm Springs at the East Valley subdivision. While we thank ACHD for reducing the speed to 35 near the new elementary school that's opening in just a couple of weeks, the speed also needs to be lowered on the last stretch between Shakespeare and Highway 21. This would make it a consistent 35 all the way through the Barber Valley, which is less confusing for drivers and more closely matches the speed limits of other collectors throughout Ada County. Park Center is 35 miles an hour between Bound Crossing and Apple and has many fewer driveways and access conflict points than does the east end of Warm Springs. Last month, the 2 new pedestrian crossings with RFBs were installed on Warm Springs near Maynard and Skybar to help with pedestrian safety and are already being used by many residents to access the Greenbelt. In the mornings, children who attend Riverstone International School and East Junior High are using these crossings, as well as unmarked crossing at Teresa to walk or ride their bikes, skateboards, and scooters to school. The kids in the Teresa area must cross Warm Springs and commute on the Greenbelt because there's no sidewalks on that part of Warm Springs. This stretch of Warm Springs is also between the Boise River Wildlife Management Area in the foothills to the east and the Barber Pool Conservation Area along the river to the west. There are 6 protected wildlife corridors that are recognized by Idaho Fish and Game that cross Warm Springs on this section, resulting in numerous wildlife vehicle interactions. Warm Springs has a comparable number of wildlife vehicle collisions to the stretch of Highway 21 near Roby Creek that's getting the new wildlife overpass in addition to the existing wildlife underpass. ACHD recognizes the risk of vehicle wildlife collisions on the south end of Warm Springs and marked this section with the lower nighttime speed limit. Why wouldn't ACHD worry just as much about the risk of vehicle pedestrian and vehicle bicycle collisions and lower the speed to 35 at all hours?
Thanks, Rob. Any questions for Mr. Stark?
Yes.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
I just wonder, Mr. Stark, how aware you are of as Ryan had intimated, which is a fact, of how little enforcement there will be for any reduction in speed limits.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I am all too aware that we don't get a whole lot of police presence out there. Sometimes during the school rush hour there is, but mostly confined to being near East Junior High School. It always puts a smile on my face when you do see somebody getting popped, especially
you actually have?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And follow the car into East Junior High School and watch the junior high school kid walk away as quick as they could from their mom's SUV with her head down, all embarrassed that her mom got pulled over in the parking lot of the school.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because boy, you see it far too rarely anymore. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Rob. Welcome, John. Please state your name and address.
Madam President, Commissioners, John Mooney, 7153 East Highland Valley Road. I got a couple questions. We have 3 board members online. Will they be able to speak as well, or is this only in person?
My intention was really the leader, like the folks that were here, and that's why I mentioned other folks online could testify during the public communications period.
Fundamentally, we agree with almost everything Ryan has said, and we have some comments about the context. We think the context is changing, and Commissioner Goldthorpe's just comments right now about enforcement. We greatly understand the 3 E's here: education, enforcement, and engineering. And Ryan brought that up. The engineering piece is huge to changing this and getting the enforcement and the speeds right. but I've got some kind of prepared remarks that I'll make here. The Barber Valley Neighborhood Association's been advocating for changes to the Warm Springs corridor since 2015 to change what was once a high-speed state highway into a safe neighborhood collector street. Our latest request began with a letter to you and staff on 31 August. We followed up with a TELUS inquiry on 5 October. Ryan responded to us and informed us of today's work session to discuss this issue, and we're very grateful to Ryan and his staff for their attention to our request and this incremental step in improving road safety. We also want to thank ACHD for the installation of the new RRFBs at the Park Center and the Warm Springs Roundabout at the entry to Harris Ranch. We haven't talked about this yet. We were not involved in coordinating that at all. So we asked via TELUS who to thank on the staff. Didn't get a response on that. So here it is, whoever on staff's responsible for those new RRFBs at that roundabout, thank you very much. We weren't involved, but we love the result. As Rob said, we're here to testify about this work session and the recommendation to keep a 40-mile-per-hour limit from Shakespeare to 21. This stretch of road is bounded by conservation areas on both sides, and we absolutely recognize that a speed limit change alone will not improve safety for all road users. In our view, this commission erred years ago when they decided to not install roundabouts on this stretch of Warm Springs when Brighton Corporation came forward with the development of the River Heights neighborhood. That was a lost opportunity, and now it's going to be tough for you to find the budget to do this later and do the engineering changes that Ryan recommends. We now must wait for a taxpayer-funded road redesign to see changes that can contribute to reduced vehicle speeds and improved road safety. We're left with a road design that encourages high vehicle speeds, and we're here to request consideration of alternative methods to determine safe motor vehicle speeds, both here in Warm Springs, but most importantly across your entire network. We know you've tackled the 85th percentile method of determining vehicle speed limits many times in work sessions, and we don't want to imply we have any expertise here, nor assume that's how staff came up with the speed for this eastern section that you've already talked about. However, we'd like to highlight that the Federal Highway Administration, as well as the Institute of Traffic Engineers, has clearly endorsed other methods to determine speed limits, especially in settings with pedestrian and other non-vehicular road users. We believe your staff should consider these other approaches to offer you alternatives in your decision-making, and hopefully they will do so at some point in the future. National Transportation Review Board published a substantial report 6 years ago titled Reducing Speed-Related Crashes Involving Passenger Vehicles. In that report, the NTSB stated the following, quote, "In general, there is not strong evidence that the 85th percentile speed within a given traffic flow equates to the speed with the lowest crash involvement rate for all road types. Alternative approaches and expert systems for setting speed limits are available, which incorporate factors such as crash history and the presence of vulnerable road users such as pedestrians," unquote. We hope you'll consider that in your discussions and recognize the NTSB is basically stating that using the 85th percentile to determine if speed limits are safe makes no consideration for pedestrians or bicyclists, or for that matter, in our case, wildlife. Thank you for your time and consideration of our perspective.
Thanks, John. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Mooney? Thank you, John. I do have a question for Bree with the city. So we are in the midst of reviewing and updating our speed management policy. And one thing that we've heard from some city partners is, you know, in addition to refining the process for neighborhoods and folks to request these types of changes, we've gotten the request from cities, like how can they be part of this process? And so I think my point is I want to invite you up to weigh in on this, to also kind of figure out how best do we collaborate with not only the neighborhoods, but the cities when we consider these types of changes. So I got like a frog in my throat. My bad. Right when the microphones are working so well. So I guess my question is, where does the city stand on this? And
Sure.
And we can talk later, of course. Like, how does this process feel as for this type of? how does this particular process feel when it comes to speed?
Sure.
Any changes?
I think this is a more robust process than probably has been seen in the past, at least from a police and enforcement perspective. Sometimes we're notified, as the process is ongoing, where on the front end, if we're involved like this, and through however the new policy works, we can actually talk to police and figure out what's happening on the corridor, enforcement, if any, exists today, and they can help inform that speed limit and that policy. So happy to be involved. I spoke to Motors before this to talk about the speed limit on this stretch, and obviously consistency wherever possible is easiest to enforce, as it's easiest for the drivers as well. But they'll be the first ones to tell you that without a road designed at the appropriate speed, it's difficult to keep cars in compliance to that speed. So for whatever information that's helpful, but involving our police, involving us is really beneficial to everyone.
So did you guys get this, did you also see this request from the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association? And what's your guys's, do you guys support their request?
Absolutely. I think the consistency along the corridor is important, but also as the corridor develops, having the ultimate speed set is just as important as identifying the ultimate lane width or number of lanes, because as developments come through, they'll formulate their proposal based on the adjacent context of the roadway.
Thanks, Bree. Any questions for the city? Oh, Stacey, did you have something?
Just Mr. VC from, he's also on the board. He specifically asked to testify after the public communications. So I didn't know if you wanted to make time for one more.
Sure. I'll top it off after that. Welcome, Mr. VC. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're great.
Fantastic. Gary Veazey, BVNA Secretary, 4150 Macbeth Avenue. Madam President and Commissioners, I have 6 comments for your consideration today. Number 1, Ryan was kind enough to outline the work session process for us recently. Surprisingly, the next day, there was an announcement on Nextdoor about the speed limit reduction, and the following day, new signs were installed. We greatly appreciate the bypass reduction, but we anticipated our entire proposal would be considered by the commission today, yet some work has been completed already and some is still being considered here today. We feel clearer communication about process and neighborhood improvement is necessary to avoid confusion. 2, if 35 miles an hour at night is justified for wildlife, why isn't the same limit considered for people, including students walking to school in the dark? 35 miles an hour will provide additional protections to people and wildlife. 3, 2 schools exist southeast of Eckerd, and many students walk or ride where the limit is proposed to remain at 40. These elementary and junior high students should be afforded the same level of safety as the students that will attend the new Dallas Harris Elementary, as Rob mentioned, that's opening in 2 weeks here. 4, I'm not sure when the last ACHD speed check was done. Southeast of Shakespeare, receiving more complaints recently, commonly about loud motorcycles traveling speeds at all hours of the day and night, and vehicles being passed in double solid stripe segments. We anticipate talking to Boise Police Department about these concerns. 5, using the Sioux Howell Park construction to trigger changes makes no practical sense, given the park is 10 or more years out. What about the park's development would warrant maintaining a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit? In this case, we don't think there's a nexus between use and the speed limit. Finally, we understand there aren't any 40-mile-an-hour collectors in the city and know that some are less than 35. So why 40 miles an hour here? BVNA's goal for pushing the reclassification to collector was to achieve calming and reduce speeds. which is also identified as a goal in our neighborhood transportation plan. In conclusion, please extend the same safety measures you have approved on the bypass to the entirety of Warm Springs and allow Warm Springs to perform as a neighborhood-friendly collector. Please do the right thing for our neighborhood. And as a PS, thank you for the 2 new RRFB crossings on Warm Springs to improve safety, to improve safe connectivity across Warm Springs. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Mr. Vesey. All right, commissioners.
Madam President.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I really appreciate the Barber Valley Association coming in, and I appreciate you making this request over and over again. Since being on the commission, Barber Valley has been active in making requests to make sure that the vision of the transportation network in the valley, as the valley grew, is consistent with a livable neighborhood. And it was because of your good work that we adjusted the master street map. It took a lot of work, but you consistently came in and kept pushing for it. The commission backed you up eventually. And John, I really appreciate that history, because the whole reason why developers weren't prepared to put in roundabouts is because the ACHD was insisting that they put in double lane roundabouts, and to dedicate a huge portion of their property to building a roundabout, which would have been oversized for what the context was. And so instead, the city didn't have any other option but to let them go ahead without doing a roundabout. And that would have been very valuable. And now, in scoping this in the future, the taxpayers are going to have to pick up the tab for what would have been roundabouts on several points on that eastern segment in front of Shakespeare and in front of a couple of the other neighborhoods. This still feels like a state highway. People turn onto it, heading west into Boise from Highway 21, and the context hasn't changed. It still feels like a state highway, and so they accelerate. And then they start approaching things like neighborhoods that didn't exist when it was a state highway. Now, granted, they're not huge neighborhoods, but to me, you don't need huge neighborhoods. The context changed a number of years ago, quite a number of years ago, and the road should have changed. But because it was a state highway, we didn't do anything about it. And the good work you did to ask us to readjust it to a collector. Now I'm very concerned. Appreciate that we did get into the 5-year work plan and they were approved, the 2 crossings. But this is an east-west corridor. And if you've driven on it at sunset or sunrise, you also have the sun in your eyes. And I'm very fearful that kids are going to get killed. We have had kids killed in RRFB crosswalks by drivers who assume the context. They can take their eyes off of the road and they're going fast. And so I'm very concerned because we don't have the things to slow them down. We need more than just speed limit signs, but at least there'll be a number of people who will obey the speed limit, and that will help those behind them obey the speed limit. And then maybe they'll pay attention. Oh, there's a little flashing yellow light. There's some kids who want to cross this wide area. You know, it's a chicken and an egg. It's like the police aren't going to go out there and enforce at 40 miles an hour, but if we adjust it to 35 miles an hour, that could be, as Bree suggested, a higher priority. It just doesn't make sense that we wouldn't make that whole corridor and treat the neighbors along the entire corridor the same. And it is inconsistent. We did this on Boise Avenue. The rationale for adjusting Boise Avenue to a consistent speed limit earlier in the year was because even though the context changes and it's narrow at some points, there's only a few houses at some points, and then there's lots of houses, is because we wanted a consistent speed limit on that whole corridor. And so I think the same rule should apply to this, and I think we should move forward and set the speed limit at 35.
Thanks, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Sure. I think about these sorts of things probably in a little different context than anyone else here on the commission. I don't think any of them would disagree with that. I appreciate Ryan Head more than I can say, and I appreciate his report, and I agree with what he said 100%. But there's a couple of personality quirks that I have myself that will cause me to reduce the speed limit. One is consistency, doesn't have to be explained. The other one is redundancy, which does. If we don't lower the speed limit now, we'll have to go through this all over again whenever that comes up. 5 years, 10 years, and it'll be a different commission, probably different neighbors, different officers in the neighborhood association, and that's, why waste that time? The fact of the matter is that there will be very little, if any, enforcement of this. Someone stated that they have crotch rockets going about 60, 70 miles an hour on that road. I have them about 90 on mine, which is no bigger than this road at all. And that kind of upsets me too. I would that there were greater enforcement all over the place, but there won't be for quite some time, I'm afraid. I have no problem reducing the speed limit today.
Thanks,
Thank
Ken.
you.
Commissioner Gold?
Thanks, Madam President. Yeah, I want to say thanks to the neighborhood for organizing and, consistently requesting this and coming out. And I agree with Commissioner Goldthorpe's comments. I think the consistency piece is important, so I'm also in support of reducing the speed limit. And obviously neighbors understand that the enforcement piece is going to be tricky, and that without those other design features and other external pressures to help folks slow down, that the speed limit change itself is not going to do the trick. But I think it's important to reduce it, and then moving forward, get the roads designed consistent with the speed that the neighbors would like to see it at. So,
Thanks. Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, thank you. I think Ryan's presentation was very good. The posted speed limit of 40 is already more than 5 miles an hour below the 85th percentile speed. And despite concerns about whether the 85th percentile method is the best method or the one size fits all, it may not be, but it still points out kind of the difficult fact here is that changing the speed limit on this road isn't really going to change driver behavior to a great degree. The other changes that have been talked about with vegetation and other improvements and so on, they will, and it makes sense to me to adjust the speed limit when the built environment is consistent with that. And so the idea that we need to be consistent throughout an entire stretch of roadway with the speed assumes that the built environment is the same, the number and spacing of approach points and so on. And it's not. There is quite a difference on this eastern stretch of Warm Springs. It opens up quite significantly compared to what we have on the western, beyond the western end of this segment we're talking about. So, I look at it and I say, in the first place, nobody wants there to be accidents or injuries. But I don't think changing the speed limit under these conditions is going to make any real difference in that respect. And frankly, the concern about, the comparison to speeds related to wildlife, fortunately, even our school children have a little more sense than wildlife, which, they can learn about safety and so on, and they do a good job. And the reality is that we can't have everything. We'd like to, but we can't. And if we adjust the speed limit here, it'll make us feel good, but I don't think it'll really do anything else. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Well, it looks like you've got us commission in support for this request. Steve, do we need to have a motion at all, or because we're in a work session, but you've got consensus? Is that good enough for you? Perfect. Well, just want to say thank you to all of the folks online. Thank you to the neighborhood association. Thank you to the city, and thank you to staff. And I appreciate your willingness to share insights about the process of how we adjusted the one section, but how we need to come up with a plan on how we would communicate where that is, and this whole process of how you make these requests, and how we share those updates with you. So that's been duly noted, so I appreciate that. All right, we're gonna move on to item number 2. It's the Bannock Street Neighborhood Improvement Concept Pre-Adoption. Welcome, Ensign.
Thank you, Madam President, Commission. Good afternoon, Commission. For the record, my name is Serensen Bautista, ACHD Senior Transportation Planner. For today's meeting, staff wanted to present an update on the Bannock Street Neighborhood Improvement Concept in preparation to the October 25th adoption hearing. This work session is an information briefing only, and no decision is required from the Commission at this time. For this presentation, we'll go over the overall planning areas, as well as the purpose and goals, the public outreach done for this concept, and the proposed improvements that came out of that, of the existing condition review and the public outreach, and finally, next steps. As part of this project, so in this slide, we provide an overview of the bike corridor from both the west and the east face. This concept consists of two bicycle routes, which were identified in the Roadways to Bikeway Master Plan, and they are part of our low-stress bicycle network. As mentioned, this is broken down on the west face, which connects Main Street and Pleasanton Street to Bannock Street, and taken to the east all the way to Avenue C. And then the east face, this section connects from Donald Larson through Bannock Street, finally connecting to Warm Springs and ultimately the Greenbelt. Following Commission direction, staff and the consultant evaluated the entire corridor following the going once approach. Some of the key destinations throughout both of these phases includes the Whittier Elementary School, the Fairview Park, downtown Boise, the Cecile D. Andrews Park, the Donald Larson, the Greenbelt, and the Greenbelt. In this slide, we present some of the purpose and goals that we achieved, or we aim to achieve as part of this project. Starting with the identification of bicycle and pedestrian improvements that provide low stress experience. These improvements include bicycle facilities, include improvements like bicycle facilities, filling sidewalk gaps, sidewalk repairs, curb and repairs, intersection improvements, signage, traffic calming measures, and more. We're also aiming to achieve the recommendation of intersection crossing improvements that increase connectivity, accessibility, and safety for all users. Emphasize the presence of the Bannock Street as an east-west connection, bicycle low-stress route. Identify existing pedestrian infrastructure that complies with current standards and the American with Disability Act, and as well create awareness of the pavement maintenance and drainage efforts that are planned for the entirety of the corridor. Before going over the entire, diving into the public outreach, we want to acknowledge the project team that were involved in the preparation of this concept. Going from our capital project staff to our mobility accessibility staff, traffic team, communication, and acknowledge our partner agencies who were involved for the very start of the concept. This being the City of Boise, Boise School District, and the Capital City Development Corp, CCDC. As well as our consultant, which is Fern Pierce. Our public outreach, we started this concept with a kickoff with our ACHD advisory committees. This happened early in the process, and where we, as part of this meeting, we also conducted a bike tour with our bicycle advisory committee, going through those 2 miles of the bicycle route. We also presented in front of the Neighborhood Association. We presented in front of the East End Neighborhood Association and the West End Neighborhood Association to introduce the project, create more awareness of the project timeline and process, as well as collect initial inputs with which areas of concerns, and ultimately identify those dates for those public outreach that were going to happen later in the process. And diving into the public outreach, this consists of two efforts. One starting during the month of May, where staff and the consultant released an online survey, where through this survey, we aim to collect those additional input from the general public, as well as identifying areas of concerns, areas that we should focus on as part of this project, and as well learn a little bit more about the neighborhood and the way they travel through this route. As part of this process, we received a total of 480 comments and 1,120 visits to the webpage during this comment period. And then after collecting that input, we compiled all the feedback and came back to the board to the project team to identify what those draft proposed improvements look like. Ultimately, we came back in front of the public on August with an online survey and two public meetings, one on the east side and one on the east on the east end of the project, and another on the west end of the project. A total of 151 comments were received during this second public outreach, and 1,044 visits to the webpage during this comment period. These comments, the comments received during this second public involvement, were used to refine the proposed improvements. And in general, in summary, we receive a overall support of the majority of the proposed improvements presented at that time. And now diving more into the proposed improvements, as part of the corridor wide, the overall improvements, we are recommending the continued installation of our branding sign, as well as wayfinding signage along the corridor, and the installation of share lane markings all throughout. And I will start from the west side, starting from 29th Street all the way to 16th Street. This section was identified as part of our pavement management team with a need of the reconstruction of the maintenance of the road, with this being 1.5-inch mill and inlay. As part of this recommendation, we will later in the next couple slides, we will go over these crossing improvements at 29, 27, 23rd, 19, 18, and 17th Street intersections. As part of the recommendation, we're also recommending the restripe of any existing shadows. As part of the public outreach, we heard significantly public feedback regarding 15 and 16 intersection, and in coordination with our partner agency, CCDC, who's currently working on a project within those limits, and it's from 16 to 13. We're looking to coordinate with them and through that project identify what improvements are needed for those two intersections. So that's a partner, we'll be partnered with them as we continue to identify what those improvements look like for those two intersections.
Ensign, can you explain, because that was news to me, I didn't realize that CCDC had a project in that neck of the woods. Can you explain, not just from 16th to 13th, but north and south, what the area is that they're working in?
So CCDC is mainly working on Bannock Street from 16 to 13. It doesn't expand to the north side as much as I know. So those are the specific intersections they're looking for as part of that project.
Okay, thank you.
And then jumping from 13 to 16 to 6th Street, as part of our recommendation, we are looking to evaluate bike boxes at 13, 9th, and 6th Street. From 6th Street to 2nd Street, we will continue to evaluate, recommend the same improvements as for the corridor wide, but with improvements at the 3rd Street intersection, 3rd Street and Bannock, where CCDC has another project. In this case, it's 3rd Street landscape improvements, and they're looking into improving that intersection as a whole. And now diving into the intersection improvement, starting with 29 and Bannock Street. The project team recommendation for this intersection is raising the intersection for traffic calming measures, as well to increase safety and visibility for bicycle and pedestrian users at that intersection. For 27th and Bannock, based on the feedback received from the school district as well as the project team evaluation, for consistency for the school crossing this roadway, we are recommending moving the pedestrian hybrid beacon currently located there to the south side. Since over in 29th Street, that's the crossing that's also recommended for the school access. So for keeping students on the same side of the road and making it consistent, we're recommending this change, as well as the recommendation of the overall improvement of this intersection with bulb outs on legs on the Bannock Street, as well as the treatment of a two-con crossing. The two-con crossing, it limits the movement of through traffic through Bannock Street, and this would, but allowing the through traffic of bicycle users as well as pedestrian. Through this process, we are also recommending bike push buttons that will activate the PHB and ultimately increase that safety for all users through this intersection. For 23rd Street and Bannock, consistent with the previous recommendation, we are recommending the move of the current RFB from the north side to the south side, as well as the inclusion of a raised intersection for the overall treatment for this intersection, as well as the recommendation of a bicycle push button. For 19 and Bannock Street, in here, we're recommending the evaluation of a mini traffic circle. Due to the configuration of the intersection, we believe that this would be a good opportunity for evaluating this treatment. Has a starting point through as a temporary treatment, and then seeing how that how traffic patterns go along with this intersection, as well as marking all legs of this intersection for pedestrian usage, and ADA improvements in this intersection in all of them. For 18 in Bannock, similarly, for this intersection, we're recommending a raised intersection, similar to previous raised intersection. This is to increase safety, traffic calming, pedestrian, bicycle users' safety. For 17 in Bannock, we're recommending the installation of bulb outs. This would reduce the crossing distance for this intersection, as well as increase the visibility of the pedestrians on all four corners. And with this, these are the specific treatments for the west face of the Bannock Street concept. And jumping into the east face, this section connects Donna Larson through the cemetery pathway to Bannock Street, and then Bannock Street to Warm Spring, ultimately to the Greenbelt. Corridor-wide, the project team recommendation is to continue the installation of the corridor branding, wayfind design, and the share lane markings. Between Bruce Ave and for Flume Street, we're looking to do intersection improvements as part of the connection to create more safety in coordination with the city of Boise. For Bruce Ave to Costin, the pavement, we're recommending a full reconstruction of the roadway due to the pavement condition currently being low, as well as crossing improvements on Walnut Street. Finally, since this project is in connection with adjacent project like the Warm Spring Avenue study, some of the recommendations that will come from that study will apply to in the connection of the Bannock Street project. Like, for example, at Avenue C and that connection at Costin Ave and Martin. And diving into briefly towards the intersection, we have the Flume Street in Bannock. This intersection is in connection to the cemetery pathway, and currently it is an unpaved section of section of path that the public's using to access Bannock Street. Overall, we're looking to improve this pathway by paving it, as well as to include ADA accessible ramps for better usage of this connection over the canal. Just to highlight, this is the intersection that received the most amount of comments and in support from the public as part of the east phase of the Bannock Street project. And finally, we have the Walnut Street, Bannock Street. This is a intersection that connects two of our low-stress bikeways, Walnut being our north-south and Bannock east-west. For this intersection, we're recommending the improvement as a raised intersection for traffic calming and bicycle pedestrian safety. In total, going over the proposed improvements, the estimated cost for the west phase totals to $1.8 million, and for the east phase being $2.3 million. As mentioned before, these two projects have a large maintenance component behind them, and which totals to $1.1 million for the west phase and $2.2 million for the east phase.
And Ensign, can you clarify, like, what do you mean by that? Like, is it that coming from the maintenance budget, or that can you explain that a little bit better?
Absolutely. So as part of, so this project it's phased as we start looking into the programming of this project, it will phase. So this had been previously identified through our payment management team. So this is something that trickled down into this project to create that awareness to the public that is something that will come out of that maintenance component.
Thanks, Ensign.
And Planning Commission, as part of our next steps, from October 11th to the 25th, we will be releasing the draft concept for public review. And this will be in preparation for the October 25 adoption hearing, where staff will come back in front of the commission for adoption consideration. And with this, I've finished my presentation. I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Ensign. Commissioners, questions for staff? Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, if you go back to the slide that Commissioner Pickering asked about, you had 1.8 million there on the west side and 1.1 million that was already programmed for maintenance, correct?
Correct.
So what this project is actually costing is an extra 700,000, correct?
For the west face, correct, Commissioner.
Okay, I thought that needed a little more clarification. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Goldthorpe. Anybody else?
Madam President.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, thank you, Edinson. This is really good, and I really appreciate. Obviously, I'm more focused on the east phase because the neighborhood's been looking at that. That we're really looking not only one and done, but to see how that integrates with what we've also got going. Clearly, the whole work we're doing on scoping Warm Springs is a realization that that's where people use as the main bike corridor and walking corridor to then cross at several points down to points because Bannock just ends. It doesn't continue on through the valley, and that's why Warm Springs is so critical. And that you recognize that. We're not going to spend a whole lot of money other than, as you point out, 2.2 million of the 2.3 million is just to redo the surface of the road. So all of that's going for the benefit of vehicles on that road because it's crumbling and it needs to be done, and other roads are getting treated. And so we're going to fix especially that Flume intersection. And I just had a question about Flume. Are we going to then have curbing? Right now, it just always appears like one day this road's going to be built over that canal, and it's like, no, we made that decision many moons ago that that's not going to connect over. So is there landscaping or curbing in addition to the improved path over the canal?
I'm President Commissioner Hanson. As it currently exists, the roadway, the Flume Street and the Bannock are not even at the same level.
Right.
There's a slope that connects both of those currently with an unpaved path there. So I don't see how that would happen in the future.
Just thinking at just the landscaping of it in addition to the pathway. I really appreciate the integration of intersections, the raised intersections, which not only helps with traffic through that area, but it helps to make people more visible, the raised intersections. And the traffic circle, I think, is a great idea, especially the idea that, this would be new for that whole neighborhood. Let's do a temporary one, see how it works, test it. So I really appreciate that the plan is to put a temporary traffic circle at 19th and then to test it, and then to address the slowing of traffic, or at least the calming of traffic. And then, of course, the one at 29th is really for the benefit of the school. I think that we should pay close attention to how that benefits that school, and then think about how that might apply in other places where we have streets like this going in front of schools. Last week we heard about 9th Street and Longfellow. That might be a good example, but this I think we'll be able to test. The focus on Bannock obviously makes sense since we gave up on Jefferson with the vacation of Jefferson, even though Jefferson actually is the one that crosses into the park. What am I saying? The Whitewater Boulevard. If you are, a lot of cyclists, I certainly do that, is cut up to Jefferson sooner than the school. I don't go north to Jefferson at the school. So a lot of people just go up at various points, go 1 block north. So I really appreciate the design on this and the benefits. While it's described as the Bannock Street Bikeway, it's really a neighborhood improvement process to address improved flow of vehicle traffic and the movement of all forms through those neighborhoods. So it's more than just Bannock, as every intersection indicates. So thank you.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Edison, just a few questions on the concept here. Am I correct in ascertaining that generally speaking throughout the project, and especially in the western portion, we're not replacing curb, gutter, and sidewalk? It's mostly just pavement replacement, except of course that would be for the bulb outs and the raised intersections. Is that accurate?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, certainly that's the main things that we looked at. But as all projects, we take a closer look at from the ADA perspective where those ADA ramps need to be upgraded. So in general, we would continue to do evaluations as we go into the next stages of the process through scoping, design, and ultimately, as he goes through design, we'll identify where those additional improvements would be needed for any additional ADA ramp improvement.
Okay, so to step back, and similar to what the question that Commissioner Goldthorpe asked, I think the relative proportions of the costs for this project, since there was maintenance that was going to be done anyway, a large portion of this is the maintenance that would be done anyway. We're adding to it, adding in bulb outs, raised intersections, ADA improvements, and then of course the striping and signage and so on that we've talked about. And I guess what you're saying with your cost estimate is that all of that, for example, in the western part's only going to cost $700,000 on top of the standard maintenance amount.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, yes, that's an approximate to what those costs is associated to.
Okay. I have to admit that on first blush, that sounds a bit optimistic. But in any case, does any of this project involve closing traffic lanes, reducing any traffic lanes, or are all traffic lanes going to be the same in the future as they are now?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, well, we're not looking to change any travel lane width or those kind of changes.
Or number of lanes. What about, or number of lanes?
Of number of lanes, yeah.
What about parking? Are you planning to eliminate parking in any part of it?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, no, at this moment, no. Based on the feedback we received from the public, there was a desire to continue to have that neighborhood feel with the on-street parking there, landscapes, and current features are already present on those neighborhoods.
So then I guess, and I guess this is, it should go without saying, I presume, but I'm gonna ask the question anyway about the turning radius where you have these bulb outs. has that all been, are we gonna have any difficulty with trucks, buses, and so on that need to make those tight turns? Because of course, we've had comments and feedback from members of the public on a variety of locations and neighborhoods, projects where bulb outs now make it difficult for, emergency vehicles or trucks or what have you. I assume that's all has been or is being looked at in the design of this.
Commissioner McKinney, correct. We would technically, and for the most part, a lot of the locations we're recommending bulb outs already exist on street parking. So those conditions are already taken into account. So, yes.
Okay. And then just for my clarification, on the map showing the project scope, there were a number of locations for what are designated as bike boxes. Just clarify what exactly we mean. Are those bike signal related things, or are those bike storage locations?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, the bike boxes intent is for those sections where bike lanes get close to the intersection, where it would help whether the bicycle, it turns into the next leg, turns into a share use space, so the bicycle can accommodate to take the entire lane, or if the bicycle will turn left. And so it's more of a area within the intersection that accommodates bikes to the proper movement that will do in the intersection.
So a designated location adjacent to an intersection for bicycles to stand and wait, separate from motor vehicles. Is that what we're talking about?
And typically they would wait right. It's a space right before the crossing. So there's a space between the vehicle. They will have to wait before entering to the bike box, and it will be a safe space for the cyclists to wait for the signal to change or whatever movement they're planning to.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you. I appreciate all that information.
Thanks, Edison. All right.
Madam President.
All right. Thank you.
Sorry.
Commissioner Gold.
Edmondson, thanks. I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and I just want to echo the comments that I appreciate the inclusion of the raised intersections and neighborhood traffic circle as well. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Edison. We look forward to the 25th. Great work. Thank you. All right. Obviously, you're still up. So the Franklin Street Neighborhood Improvement Concept Pre-Adoption.
Here's the commission. Edison Bautista again for Senior Transportation Planner. So this presentation, Commission, it's a staff wanted to come back following the June work session where staff, the Commission, and the public gave feedback to staff regarding the Franklin Street Neighborhood Improvement Concept. And for this presentation, we'll go over the changes that the analysis, the finding, and the changes that are going through this as part of the next steps on the concept. This item, staff will come back in front of the Commission on October 25th for adoption consideration. This work session is information briefing only, so no decision is required from the Commission at this moment. And similar to the previous item, we'll recap the project planning area, the purpose and goals, public outreach, and the proposed changes, proposed improvements, and the changes that occurred through the time between June and now, where staff evaluates some of the feedback received during that June work session and next steps. Just as a reminder, this is the planning area for the Franklin Street neighborhood improvement. This connects from Ellis Ave all the way to Costin Street. This taking the route through as part of segment 1, being the Franklin Street section, which is the main component of that segment that connects 19th Street all the way to Ford. Segment 2, it's taking 4th Street to Washington and then taking the streets of Robinson, Collins Road, and Mountain Cove to Reserve Street. Segment 3, and this is different from the Commission, what we presented on the June work session, where we, based on the feedback received, we adjusted the route for the preferred bicycle route in this section. And in this case, the main difference is taking from the pathway to Logan Street, Avenue H, and connected to Washington Street to Costin. This slide reiterates our overall purpose and goals, similar to the Bannock Street. And this is similar to the Bannock Street and the overall purpose of the bikeways as part of projects for ACHD. Acknowledging the team, we wanted to make sure we acknowledge the team that participate. This including our capital projects team, the mobility and accessibility, our traffic team and communication, as well as our partner agencies, the City of Boise, the Boise School District, and our consultant, Jacobs. And this is, for this slide, Commission, just have to reiterate the June work session for the public outreach. This is a effort that we have worked with in coordination with our advisory committees as well as our neighborhood associations, where we present the proposed improvements. We have heard feedback and updated based on their feedback, as well as a public outreach that was done in July 2022, where we received 70 comments and 180 project website visits. In the next couple of slides, we will go over the changes that happened through the review of the feedback, as well as the analysis, the finding, and the changes that staff's recommending as part of this updated concept. And starting with the commission, following the commission feedback during the June work session, staff and the consultant evaluating the following intersection: 18th Street, 6th Street, 16th Street, 15th Street, and 9th Street. For the race intersection consideration compared to bulb outs and mini traffic circles. Following the analysis, staff and the consultant concluded that due to the presence of existing infrastructure like driveways and drainage, prevents the recommendation of the race intersection and mini traffic circle at some of this specific location, this being 18th Street and 16th Street. For 18th Street intersection, staff continues to recommend the addition of ADA improvements, but in addition include bulb outs for traffic calming measures in the Franklin section leg, in the Franklin Street leg. For 16th Street, considering the recent changes to the section of 16th Street, in addition to ADA improvement, staff would like to recommend the continued exploration of a race intersection and further coordination with the driveway property owner on the northwest section of the intersection. So at this intersection, we took a closer look at it, but due to the driveway impacts that might happen at that corner, we felt like it was necessary further evaluation and coordination with the existing property owner there to avoid any impacts to that driveway, or if there's any other alternative improvements that are needed. For 9th Street, the recommendation of bulb outs continues to be the greatest benefit for this intersection, which allows the turning distance of the crossing, the increased visibility for pedestrian, and also prevent parking blockage near the intersection. And those are the three, as for 15th Street, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention 15th Street. For this intersection, we're recommending the addition of a race intersection. The current condition of this roadway in the land use context certainly allows for us to consider a race intersection at that corner, at 15 and Bannock, 15 and Franklin. Sorry.
Madam President.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Edison, just a quick question on your last slide. On 8th Street, the improvements consistent with the 8th Street study. Is this going to be dependent upon us deciding someday what 8th Street is going to look like?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, this is consistent with what it was adopted back in 2022 for the 8th Street study in the commission decision at that time.
There at 8th Street and Franklin. So we decided what that was going to look like last year.
It was part of the concept.
Just a yes or no is fine.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead. Carry on, Jensen. Yeah, thank you.
For segment 2, in general, there were any additional changes implemented for this section. For segment 3, as mentioned before, we received feedback from the public regarding this segment, and the main change was the addition of the connection of the pathway to Logan Street and Avenue H for this segment. In addition, in consistency, we will continue to work with the City of Boise as part of the pathway improvements and the future maintenance of that section. For segment 3, this is the addition of the Washington Street route from McKinley Street to Cossin. And consistent with the feedback received, we looked at it from for any additional traffic calming elements. This included bulb outs at the corner of the improvement of ADA improvements and bulb outs, as well as the exploration of a mini traffic circle at Pierce Street. Finally, Commission, the last change that we included into the concept was the additional consideration of the pathway connecting Logan Street to Jefferson. This is one that it's identified as part of the City of Boise Pathway Master Plan, and it's an evaluation of that connection. And based on our findings or the findings on that improvement, the recommendation of a bulb out to McKinley and Bruce Ave, as well as the additional connection to Bruce Ave, which connects Bannock Street and Warm Springs. This continues to be a coordination, since the pathway is within the jurisdiction of the City of Boise. This will continue to be within coordination with the city, as well as the maintenance component with the City of Boise. Continue to the estimated cost, we heard from the Commission the desire to phase this project into different components. Based on that, we evaluate each of the segment and break down each of the costs based on each of the phases. Being phase 1, mostly consisting of the segment 1, phase 2 combining segment 2 and 3, and finally phase 3 taking the Washington route. The total.
Ensign, is that phasing? Would that be phase 1 would take 1 year, phase 2 would take another year, or would this be done in a different type of timeline?
The phases will be evaluated as part of the next steps of the project through the integrated priority work plan. So that timeline, I cannot provide that information yet until it goes through the integrated priority work process, prioritization, and programming side.
Okay, and obviously, like it's hard to tell with the lines on this, but is phase 3 including that 3rd and 4th segment? Because there's 4 different colors or 3 different.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes. Phase 3 is segment 3 and segment 4.
Okay. Thank you.
The estimated total cost for this project is for the entire project is $1.01 million. As next steps, Commission, from October 11th to the 25th, we'll be releasing the draft concept for public review in preparation for the October 25th adoption hearing. And with this, I conclude my presentation. Time for any questions.
Thanks, Ensign. Commissioners, any quick questions?
Madam President.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, not so much a quick question as I'm not prepared to support the phase 3 portion moving forward. Because, and we did a walk out there, a couple of commissioners, the neighborhood, because it really doesn't integrate how Avenue H functions. It doesn't integrate the McKinley. Washington becomes McKinley and then becomes Jefferson. So it's one corridor, and it doesn't integrate those. I think we need to rethink how all this is integrated and the changes that are coming with the Armory development. I'm fine with us moving forward with phases 1 and 2, but I would not support moving forward with phase 3. There's a lot more that needs to be worked into that. The choices that the neighborhood, that people make, unlike the corridor we looked at with Bannock Street, people use that to go all the way through. Here you have people coming on and off at various points. So in terms of a corridor that people use, virtually no one will use this to go all the way through, but they'll use portions of it at a time. The more compelling is that it desperately needs traffic calming and redesign, certainly on the Jefferson, McKinley, Jefferson, McKinley, Washington portion. And that if we're going to be in there, one and done, doing stuff on Washington and the intersection and part of Avenue H, we should do it all consistently. And so I hope the commission does not move forward with the phase 3 portion, that we pull that out, deal with that separately, and fully integrate the request that the neighborhood's asking us to do, which in the East End is a priority. It wasn't put on our 5-year work plan, but I do hope it is. And that's what I would request, that we move forward with the other part. There is one portion of that, Franklin, I would ask Commissioner Gold maybe if she has some views. There are 3 streets, 9th, 15th, and 16th that are one way, and at that point, they are used to dash through. Both 9th and 16th are southbound at that point, and so they start to accelerate as they get to Franklin. And I'm wondering whether, in fact, we really need a raised crossing at 9th and 16th so that we slow folks down, because what happens is they're driving, they're given lots of space, and they're looking ahead to the light at State Street, and they're accelerating to try and make that light, and yet we have a crossing there, a pedestrian crossing. And I'm not sure that a bulb out in and of itself is sufficient to make sure they pay attention. I think a raised crossing at 16th and 9th would make a whole lot more sense until and unless the city comes forward and changes those to 2-way, which would also help to get speeds down. But that's what happens, and that's what we've seen the consequence of that when people hit when people are hit on both on 9th and on 16th. People have been hit, and it's no consequence. So they're both one-way streets, and acceleration starts as they head towards State Street trying to make the light. So I would really like to see raised crossings, not only at 15th, but also at 16th and 19th. Excuse me, 16th and 9th, excuse me.
Okay, and I want to add, I mean, Justin and Ryan attended that walk, so Edinson, in case you want some additional details about what Commissioner Hanson is describing, I would suggest you reach out to those 2 gentlemen so we can make sure that those pieces and parts were incorporated, and we can pass this all in one bundle in a couple weeks, or next month, hopefully.
Madam President, I actually think it's a lot more complicated, and I would ask us not to hold up the other part.
Okay.
And that we move forward with 2 different concepts. The phase 3 being a separate one, that's segment 3 and 4 being a separate one, because I think a whole lot more work has to go into integrating what needs to be done on that segment. So I'd ask that we move forward as separate projects.
Okay, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Just quickly, I'm remembering back to all the different hearings we had with regards to 8th Street and how many people gave testimony that they wanted to see 9th Street slow down. So that's possibly a very good idea, what Commissioner Hanson said.
Commissioner Gold?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Hanson. I would just agree with those comments. Any additional, safety improvements that we can put in on those one-way streets to help slow people down and get them focused on those intersections would be great.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Edinson. Thanks, gentlemen, for being patient. We have our 2024 winter maintenance presentation. Welcome, Lloyd.
Afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Lloyd Carnegie, Maintenance Manager here at ACHD. With me today, I have Bobby Amadon, our Superintendent of Adams, Rich Shaw, our Superintendent of Cloverdale, and standing in for Heather Friddle, which is the Superintendent of USTIC, we have Nate Fout, which is our USTIC grade crew chief. They're the experts, so they're here to help back me up if there's any questions that I cannot answer. And we're here today to kind of give you guys an information briefing on our winter operations for this year. So we're going to quickly overview our mission, our inventory, kind of historical costs, our treatment priorities, training, look at the weather predictions of 3 different areas and see what that looks like, as well as our contact information. So our winter operations mission is to facilitate the safest possible travel conditions for the general public, utilizing all of our available resources. So our current inventory, we have just over 5,300 lane miles that are our responsibility to maintain. That is an increase from 51 lane miles from last year, so it goes to how much we have grown in just 1 year. That's just more lane miles that our crews are effectively out there monitoring and making sure are in safe condition for the traveling public. As you can tell, we also have over 4,400 cul-de-sacs, which those are unique when it comes to winter maintenance for sure. So the equipment we have at our disposal, we have 67 total winter units, and 43 of those have plows. Again, looking back to our Snowmageddon days, at that time we had 12 plows. We're up to 43. Again, we're building our inventory so that no matter what Mother Nature brings to us, we'll be able to respond and provide that safe traveling conditions for our residents. We have 156 team members, and then we have how Adams and Cloverdale, how that equipment bundles up for each of those divisions and how they can respond to a winter event. We also have contractors that we have on call every year. We're currently right now reaching out to those contractors to get them on agreements again. But last year we had over 15 contractors available with various pieces of equipment that were willing to help us out should our crews are busy trying to address certain roads and we need them to help come address something else for us. They're ready for us.
Lloyd, I'm not seeing the mini sweepers on this list. Is that on a different list?
We hadn't listed them because we do have 2 still coming. They should be here in about November, but we do have 1 mini sweeper that will be utilized for.
So we still haven't gotten the 2 that we ordered. Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
They're coming. So our material storage capacities, we're able to store magnesium chloride. We have a capacity of over 300,000 gallons distributed between Adams, Cloverdale, and our White Pit locations. We have sand salt mix at both Adams and Cloverdale, as well as straight salt for at Adams and Cloverdale. This year, we did have a meeting with some residents early on regarding the tools that we use for winter maintenance. It was very informative, even for ourselves, going through the different materials we have. One of the things that we looked at from a conference that we had recently attended is salt brine. It is a material that other agencies are using, and in their regions, they're finding it to be effective. So we're going to do a pilot this year of trying the salt brine and see how it works in our region. And should it be a successful pilot, we'll look at integrating that into our operations and using it as another tool in our toolbox. This here is an overview map of our Cloverdale, Adams, and Ustick divisions. So one thing I'd like to highlight this year that's new is up in the top northwest corner. We have Ustick now has 2 routes that they're going to be taking over and managing. So as our Ustick builds out, and I would like to thank the commission for supporting that and letting us have the equipment and manpower to branch out. And so they have now 2 routes that they're going to be maintaining themselves, and Adams has been able to take those operators and further make their routes smaller because they're growing and they're able to increase that level of service in those areas. In each of these routes, so each of the numbers that you see is a route. And in those routes, we have 2 operators, one for crew 1, one for crew 2, and they stay in those routes all winter season. And so they get to know these routes like the back of their hands. Again, it helps with consistency and the level of service in each of those routes because they just know it. They know where every manhole is, where every steel plate might be, the construction that's going on, and how they can do that route efficiently. This here is an example of what our route maps look like. It shows our priority ones are our arterials and collectors, shows the schools and bridge crossings. This is a tool that our operators use when they're out so that it visually shows them what the roads are that they need to address. Plus, should we get into 24/7 operations where we have crew 1 on for 12 hours and then crew 2 comes in afterwards, they can use this route to highlight the roads that that crew has done so that when the next crew goes out, they're not reduplicating their efforts. They just continue on where they left it off.
And Lloyd, is this map available online on our website?
We can definitely make it available online. We do have a winter operations packet that we'll put online that can have these maps there.
That would be great.
So this graph here shows historical costs for winter operations. As you can tell, the one in the middle is from our Snowmageddon winter season. This last season, we did see a significant increase compared to average winter of events we had. I think we had about over double the amount of snow events. So we did see an increase in our winter costs for last winter. So our on-call supervisors do have a lot of resources that we like to make available to them to help make the calls of when to call the operators in, what materials to use on these roads. So we have what's called road weather information systems. We have 7 of them throughout the county, and this gives them the road surface temperature, which is very critical, humidity, the dew points, and plus there's also cameras attached so they can actually see physically what that intersection looks like. So it's a very helpful tool that our on-call supervisors have at their fingertips. We also have communications with the national and local weather services to see how that weather pattern might be coming through. We are unique in the sense we have mountains on both sides. And so what may be coming from the north or the south could hit that mountain range and move off, but that's where they're communicating with that local weather service and really making sure we're addressing it in the manner that it's going to be coming. Ada County Sheriff's Office is a very crucial ally for us. They have a lot of officers out there or citizens calling in, and they have direct communication with our on-call supervisors, and they give us a lot of valuable information of what's going on out there. We have our emergency management center. Traffic management center is crucial as they have cameras all throughout the county, and we utilize those cameras often. And they're also a center that we can call internally, and they can help address if there's certain intersections that are having difficulties. We can quickly look at them, and they can help us address and coordinate. We have our on-call supervisors. We have 2 of them on staff at all times, one for Adams, one for Cloverdale, and they do communicate. So what might be happening in one district might not be happening in the other, or it might be coming to the other. And so they're in direct communication, letting them know how things are going. And if one area is done before the other, they can help coordinate to help those resources go in and aid that other direction. Because again, as the storm comes through. We have our automated vehicle location systems that are on all of our winter equipment. This again helps our on-call supervisors know where their equipment are at. We're also actively looking and addressing, trying to get it to communicate with our Cirrus controls so we can actually see what material they're putting down at what rate. We also have plow up, plow down functionalities that we can see internally so we can help address issues that might come up. And then we also have what's called Opticon units. These are when we have big snow events and we put together what's called a plow team, and they do a lot of the major roadways, and we have 3 or 4 units together. And this Opticon helps change the traffic light so that they have a steady green so the whole team can make it through at one pass. And this makes it sure that it's a safe operation, not just for the operators, but also for those citizens that are on the roadway. So our treatment priorities are, so priority 1 is arterials, collectors, major intersections, roads over 6%, school crossings. So anytime we have a winter event, first thing we're always into is our priority 1s. That's the first and foremost that we go into. Then should we have a significant amount of snow, or that morning is, it could be a Monday morning that school's coming in, our superintendents will make the call if we need to go into our priority 2s, which is our school bus routes and vulnerable population areas. And then the next step, should we have a significant amount of snowfall that's continuous and people are having difficulties getting through our residential areas, our deputy director will make the call if we do our priority 3s, which are our residential streets, which include the cul-de-sacs. So with winter maintenance, it definitely doesn't start come October 31st. This is something that even when we're in 105-degree weather, we're thinking about and planning for. So we start looking at our winter ops overview, we start looking at our routes, the maps that we have, the operators that we have in place. And so our superintendents are actively working with GIS and our operators going through and making sure everything's updated, finalized, and ready for when October 31st hits. We do have communications that we work with as well to make sure that we have press releases ready. We have meetings which we'll go into in another slide of how we communicate with the public. Because communication is very vital to making sure that citizens know what we're doing and how we're doing it, and so they can plan their days accordingly. And then by this Friday, our plan is to have all our winter equipment already pre-checked, deficiencies noted, have them planned for repairs so that come October 31st, all our winter equipment's ready to go, as should Mother Nature decide, let's send some snow early. And then we'll also have our winter ops packets ready for this Friday. So training is a very vital and important piece to winter operations. It helps aid into safe operations. So on Tuesday next week, we are having our supervisors training. This is where we go into the policies, procedures. When a storm event comes, how do you make that decision of who to bring in or what to use, how to utilize our AVL system. And so this year we actually have 4 new supervisors that are coming on board. So again, very crucial that we have this training and brush off the cobwebs, make sure everybody knows how to make those proper decisions. Then the Wednesday and Thursday after that, we have our operator training. I do want to highlight, we have 33 new operators this year. So that's quite a bit. So we're really going to be focusing on the training this year, again, for safe operations, how to use the equipment, how to put the plow and the sanders on properly, you know, how to read their routes. They are partnered with seasoned operators so that when they go out, they have that experience with them for them to ask questions, how to, you know, properly maneuver that plow. And so they have that seasoned operator with them for the first 2 to 3 snow events. And then once they feel comfortable, they will meet with our superintendents, have a one-on-one with them. They will go over all the expectations, make sure that they feel comfortable operating that equipment and doing it in the winter operations. And then they will be signed off. If they don't feel comfortable, we'll still keep that seasoned operator with them until they do feel comfortable. We want them feeling comfortable so they can operate properly. And then October 31st, winter operations begins. But again, it's whenever Mother Nature decides to send it our way. So outreach, we have our winter operations plan summary that we do share with the sheriff's office. We actually met with their dispatch center yesterday, gave them a very similar presentation that we're giving to you today. Again, the more they know and how we operate, when they give us the calls and communicate with us, they already know what way we think and how we do stuff. And so it's a very good partnership. We also send it out to all the police departments, emergency management. Again, the more they know, the better they can respond. And then we also have a good connection through our communications team with our school districts, and we provide them the same packets. We also make sure that the bus routes, if there's any changes, we make sure that they let us know of those changes so we can adjust our routes, so that when we do that priority 2 school routes, we know exactly what their school routes are, because those things change year from year. So our communication strategy is communicate early and communicate often. So we do have several press releases ready to go. You know, the permitting one for HOAs, our community responsibility one. So at certain key dates, our communications teams will be pushing those out, or even during a certain storm event, they'll have those ones all ready to go to push out with the correct information for our citizens to be able to help us treat these weather systems. We have communications connection. This is where we invite the communication teams from other agencies to come meet with us, go over what we do for winter operations. They can ask any questions. They can help that with their own agencies and how they respond to citizens. We also have the neighborhoods in the know. This was an event, I think we put it on first time last year. It was very successful. We're going to do it again. It's where we have HOAs and other citizens that are just wanting to know. They can come in. We give them our winter operations presentation. They get to ask questions, and it was a great success last year, so I'm looking forward to it again this year. Social media, ride-alongs, flyers, tweet-alongs, and then all our media relations that we have. So it's, again, a lot of communication, because they need to know what we're doing and how we're doing it so that they can address their routes or even help us out in a storm. So here's where we go to our winter predictions. We have 3 different areas that we look at. We have the Old Farmers, the New Farmers, and then the National Weather Service. So Old Farmers Almanac is predicting a cold and snowy winter season this year. So they're saying, get ready, we're going to have lots of snow and it's going to be cold. The New says, yes, we are going to have cold, but it's just going to be wet. And then you go to the National Weather Services, it's going to be warmer than usual and not as much precipitation. So it's that crystal ball. So what we always do here at ACHD is we plan for the worst and hope for the best. So again, we have our materials in place, we have our equipment getting on board, we have our operators that we're going to be training, so that no matter what Mother Nature brings our way, we're going to be ready to tackle anything. Just like we did last year, I was very impressed with our winter maintenance team. We had double the amount of average winter storm events, and they handled every single one amazingly. So I know they're going to do the same thing this year. Contact information, Adams and Cloverdale/Ustick are our primary numbers. So should citizens have immediate concerns and need some roads addressed, they can contact those phone numbers. Should those numbers be busy for some odd reason, they can contact the main line. Again, that main line will take the information and then pass it back to the Adams or Cloverdale/Ustick yard so they can disperse it to the on-call supervisors and to the operators that are out there. Should it be after hours, we do have the non-emergency dispatch that they have our on-call supervisor numbers, so they can call that number after hours, and then they will contact our on-call supervisor directly. And then, of course, we always have our TELUS and ACHD websites that they can get a hold of us as well. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Excellent work, Lloyd. Thank you for that update. I just have one question. Commissioner Gold and I met with Jody Peterson-Steigers with Interfaith, and she had mentioned that our plow drivers on going south on 16th typically put a lot of snow from the plow on that corner of Fairview and 16th. And that's one of the few ADA compliant ramps, and it's adjacent to the only public restroom in the area. And so I just wanted to put that on your radar that we shouldn't be doing that anymore. And if we can find a different place to put that snow from that stretch of 16th, then that would be advantageous in the right step forward.
Yes, noted.
Thanks, Lloyd. Any other questions for staff?
Madam President, I just want to do a
Commissioner
shout out.
Hanson.
Every year it gets better and better. And I think the reason we didn't get a lot of complaints last year, even though we had a lot of snow, was we had a fantastic communications team working closely with you so people understood and anticipated. It helped that most of the irritating snow melted away before the end of the day. So the communications is so critical. We have, I don't know, 500,000 more people here than we did in 2017. So there's a whole bunch of people who don't realize, you know, we're not going to come out and make your snow disappear if we get a deep freeze. So it's just the reality. And so I think that working together on the communication teams is just really, really good. And I think more people understand. They also understand their role in identifying the drainage, because as it melts, it needs to drain. So now is the time you clear those routes and you make sure that if it's a couple blocks down and your neighbor's got a bunch of leaves sitting on top of it, you know, it's going to back up on your property. So all those sorts of communication things are really good. People are obviously, more people are getting it. Keep it up.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Lloyd.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for being here. All right. Last one, safety team concept presentation. Ryan, you're up.
Commission, President Pickering. For the record, Ryan Head, Deputy Director, Development and Technical Services. I'm here today with an information briefing. We titled it Reimagining DTS, and really this is looking at my division and how do we continue to move forward in the safety discussion. This is building on the reimagining of ACHD that really began earlier this year with the rebranding effort. The director's initiatives of Accelerate Innovation and Lose has really been a driving force as we've looked at opportunities to change and to evaluate and to improve. One of the outcomes of that was the Rapid Project Team. We've been excited to be able to deliver many projects. Really, one of the key goals we always have is to give the best return on investment to the taxpayers, and that's been great to be able to give more back quickly. The operational imperatives really set the stage for where we go moving forward. One of the outcomes of that is the full service planning and projects team that really was stood up last week. With now we have planning, projects, right away and construction all under one leadership, and that's an exciting success to see there. As we look at DTS, we want to make sure we're building on a solid foundation. And so these are three key points that staff embraces. First and foremost is that safety is our top priority. We've always looked at that. We try to do that today, and we plan to continue to do that in the future. Really, it's a key role of public service is to care for the public that we serve. The second is that when we build projects, we use the best practices that are available for safety at that time, and really try and embrace what the culture and the industry is saying is the best and the safest way to build. The last is to proactively approach improving safety. We don't need to wait for crashes to occur. Really, we want to ensure and to do what we can to make things safer now. The operational imperative of safety in everything we do really goes beyond. While today we're talking about development and technical services, all parts of ACHD embrace this idea of safe operations, building what's safe, and maintaining it in other ways. As we talk about development and technical services, really want to say this is your rapid projects team. As we originally looked at this, we said, all right, how do we form an actual team? But really, as we looked at it, the entire division can engage in these activities and work to embrace and build projects faster. Right now, we have 3 departments: traffic services, development services, and environmental. But we also have some groups there on the right that are outside of that department structure. So what we are proposing today is a reimagination and the stand-up of a safety engineering department within development and technical services. This team's primary responsibility would be moving to a proactive and focusing on proactively addressing safety. We are proposing a minor change to the name of traffic services, renaming that traffic engineering and operations. And really, this team is also focused on safety, but their focus will continue to be on the feedback we get from the public, on evaluating crashes, the things that they're doing now to make sure that we are addressing safety. They'll continue to have that responsibility, while the safety engineering team will have the role of going and finding and doing what we can to improve and proactively address safety. The goal here is prevention. How do we prevent crashes from occurring? We want to do what we can to reduce crashes, to improve the infrastructure so that it serves all users. And we'll continue to look at industry crash reduction factors and how do we implement those in places where they're most needed. Some of the key tasks that we are proposing for the safety team to do is to do an intersection by intersection safety audit, looking at each intersection, seeing what can be done to make this more safe for all users, and then putting it into effect. An example is similar to what we did on 16th Street, where we looked at and said, hey, there's some changes that could be easily made here. Let's put those into effect. Another task would be accelerating school safety projects. We have a number of these, but not necessarily the staff to get them done as quickly as we would like to get them done. And so that's one of the tasks we would give this team. In a couple weeks, you'll talk about the gap filling approach with chip seal. This team, as you'll hear in that presentation, will be an instrumental part in taking the identified gaps and bringing them to completion. We've talked about over the last few years, a very common thing Commissioner Hansen brings up is the temporary treatments and how do we implement those. One of the challenges we have is we have staff that are very busy responding and reacting to all that comes in through TELUS, through all the different information sources that come in. This team would have that opportunity to test things out, to see how they work, to try using temporary treatments to have impact. We do believe that this will have an opportunity to expand the rapid approach, to continue to invest quickly for the public. Within this team is also our LPI team. We know that that's going to take some time to fully roll out in every intersection. And so this team would be tasked with following that through to completion, as well as including our Safe Sidewalk program. For those not familiar necessarily with our Safe Sidewalk program, this is the team that reviews the existing sidewalks to make sure that they're ADA compliant. They take care of cracks and heaving and all of those types of things to make sure the system's working for everybody. So what would this team look like? First of all, we want to take advantage of the existing staff that we have. The LPI Special Projects team really was 2 individuals pulled from out of their departments. So we kind of lowered the staff available in those departments, but really to help accelerate and get the project going. This was intended to be a temporary assignment for about a year and a half to really engage in that, but they would be part of this team. Our Safe Sidewalk team, which consists of a coordinator and 2 inspectors, who oversee about $1.6 million of investment every single year. And then our design team. This design team is really an internal design resource that we have. They help maintenance, things like the sinkhole that recently happened, get those things addressed quickly. They help the Safe Sidewalk team to come up with the plan so that they can get things done and implemented. But they also are in the process of training themselves up to make sure they can also design signals, so that we can implement some of the LPI things, some of the changes that are there. But really to move beyond what we currently have and the approach of reacting to the inputs we receive, we need additional resources in order to move to a proactive stage. And what we're proposing here are 5 additional FTE. With the stand-up of a new department, we need a manager to lead it. And this would be the resource that's connected to the budget committee to provide for, to make sure that we have the resources there and to provide the energy behind the team continuing to accomplish and proactively address things. We've learned from the LPI Special Projects team the success of having a civil engineer and a traffic engineer work together. They are able to see things from 2 different perspectives, and as they engage together at looking at the design and what can be done here, they're able to bring a lot of powerful success and force behind the work so that they can accomplish more faster. And so we're recommending an additional civil engineer and a traffic engineer, really with the emphasis of safety. The safety project coordinator would play the role of helping to identify projects, but also overseeing the installation and construction. We would continue to use in-house resources where we can for installation, but we know we're going to have to use contractors to expand that force and to get more done this way. The last thing we're asking for is a right-of-way agent. This would stay within planning and projects together, and so that we keep the similar process all the time. But what we recognize, one of the things with the rapid project approach we've said is that we will we're not going to do projects that require right-of-way. But we know when you're talking about safety, that doesn't always work. Sometimes you need additional right-of-way to build the ramps so that we can implement LPI, or additional right-of-way so that we can implement and fill a sidewalk gap. Really, their goal would be to help with some of the smaller things. We're still going to try and get as much done operationally as we can, but this right-of-way agent would be available to provide that immediate support. If there are moments in which we don't need their direct help, they can also be helping our capital projects team at the same time. So that's why the plan is to place them within planning and projects. We keep a consistent process, but also have the resource available to accomplish this work. So next steps, on next week's agenda, we are proposing a regular agenda item authorizing the safety team and the 5 full-time employees. Assuming that gets approved, we would begin the recruiting process. Come January, we would, as needed, we'd put it in for a budget adjustment. We do believe that there's some savings from some of the authorized positions that are not yet filled that could help pay for the cost of this year. But ultimately then the plan would be to regularly report back to you on what are their efforts and what's the success of these efforts. With that, Commission, I stand for any questions.
Thanks, Ryan. Director Wong mentioned like the budget cost would be like, aside from this year, do you have any like forecast? You mentioned like something about 1%, it would be really minimal to the overall budget, but do you have any numbers particularly?
If you look at our overall staff budget, it's really a very small percentage that it would increase that. I'm not sure the exact number. I think it's.
Oh, hi, Paul.
Thank you, Paul's.
Thanks for mosting on it.
Commissioners, Paul Daigle, Chief of Staff. A rough number is right around $500,000, which is in round numbers 1% of the A budget. So
Thank you.
less than 1% of the overall budget.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioners, questions. Commissioner
Madam
Gold.
President. Yeah, thanks. This is great, Ryan. Thank you for the overview. One question I have is, what is the coordination with the with Justin's team with plans and projects? Would that be the safety project coordinator would kind of do that overlap? And
Yeah, thank you so very much, Madam President, Commissioner Gold. The plan, the integrated 5-year work plan is still in place. These are the types, any project that really grows beyond something that the team believes it can accomplish within that goal of that 1-year period. That's what the rapid project team is focused on, is how do we complete things within a 1-year period. Things that are going to take a lot longer, be a lot larger infrastructure, those would be handed over to the integrated 5-year work plan for a broader process. Anything that they see though through the integrated 5-year work plan and through a request, those also can come over, right? And so that the public can help identify some of these improvements and help draw our attention to those things. So really we see this opportunity to go back and forth. With the coordinator and the manager there, they will work closely with the coordinator and manager, or the supervisor and manager in planning.
okay, thanks. I'm gonna follow up. So one thing that I pretty consistently hear from folks is an interest and a need for education. So I would suggest including communications in the safety team too, because I think that it could be a really good opportunity to have kind of a more continued education approach for the public as we make these improvements too.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Madam President?
Commissioner McKinney.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments on this. I guess 5 new full-time employees, and we're only anticipating $500,000 per year to support that. That does, I have to admit, that sounds a bit optimistic to me. But I guess, you know, and I think I want to take this moment to kind of make clear, some have misunderstood some comments I made a couple of weeks ago. It's very clear that, and it should be, and always has been, and is true, that safety is a part of everything we do. It has to be. But safety isn't the only thing that we do. What I mean is we also expand roads and we increase capacity, and those things themselves aren't directly, they all incorporate principles of safety and design and so on. But I guess what I'm looking at is we already have a team of 12 individuals, it looks like, who are already working on safety projects. And so my comment a couple of weeks ago was simply that safety is an unending demand. And if we're dedicating money just to safety, that can grow forever. There's no end to it. There will be no end to the demands for safety, both the demands that are spoken by the public and the simple reality that our roadways present conflict points between vehicles and with pedestrians and bicyclists, and that's always going to be the case. So I guess part of my concern is that when you have something that is an open-ended demand, but we have not established any sort of criteria for determining how much is enough, then we have a real problem here, because you've got something that can just suck all the resources. And in my opinion, our spending focused solely on certain types of projects is a little bit out of proportion, especially when you consider how quickly the county is growing and has been growing for many years. So we set up a new team with new employees, and their entire purpose is going to be to generate, of course, and plan safety projects above and beyond, what we're already doing. What criteria do we have for deciding how much of our resources are we going to put toward those things? Because it could go on forever. It can just continually grow, like some government programs always just grow and never, ever, ever stop growing. What's our criteria for deciding, what portion of our budget we're going to put toward these safety projects? Because there could be no end to it, and that's my concern, is that we have to have some criteria for deciding, weighing the need to expand capacity and the need to deal with safety issues. How do we decide? What's your approach to this, and what is this safety team going to be tasked with doing that makes that decision?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, ultimately, the decision on how much we allocate to this is yours. You adopt the budget, you adopt the integrated 5-year work plan. That's where we get our driving, our priorities from. And so for this team, they will be going through some of the items that I discussed. They will be identifying projects. The plan will be moving forward, that they would have a line item in the budget that shows how much is allocated towards this. If there are additional things needed to complete projects, we would propose those through a budget adjustment. It's ultimately the commission's decision.
So the intention is to have a separate budget line item for this safety team, both supporting the team itself and the projects, or just for the projects that the team is designing?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, the departments within ACHD have a specific code within the budget. And so this, as a department, it would have its own budget that would be allocated to it.
So when we look at our budget as a whole and we divide it into, we have capital improvement projects, we have bridge projects, and we have, so we've got roadway and intersection projects over here, we've got bridge projects, and then we've got our community programs. We're going to have, in addition to that, we're going to have a separate item that's going to be the safety team projects. Is that what we're talking about? Because a lot of what are currently classified as community programs are things like sidewalk gaps and bicycle projects and so on. So are we adding on to that, or are we taking part of that and shifting it over?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, it really depends on the type of work that's done. There are certain projects that may rise to the level of being in the capital budget, but a lot of these are operational type activities. Signs, paint, striping, or markings, temporary infrastructure, those fall under the operational budget and our operational activities. If we're talking about a identified sidewalk project that we know about long enough in advance, it would go through the typical budget process, or it may come through a budget adjustment where it would be added to the capital budget. But generally, there would just be an amount of funds that are allocated under the operational side for operational type safety projects.
So the intent here is that this safety team, they would be primarily doing those sorts of projects, the short term, kind of stopgap. I mean, that's not the right word for it, but the short term, immediate need projects that get identified. They're tackling those primarily. They're not dealing with, we're planning to put in, sidewalks in this neighborhood or bike paths over here, and that gets put into the capital budget. What we're saying is we have a separate budget here that's just for these quick, small safety projects. Is that what we're talking about?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that is the intent. When we talk about filling sidewalk gaps, we're talking about adding some shoulder, a paved pathway, something, not the ultimate build out. We're talking about how do we get something so that pedestrians, cyclists, vehicles have clear signs that there's infrastructure available for all people.
Thanks,
you.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes. Just to satisfy some, and I'm not asking you to answer my question right now, because it's gonna be a little deep, for me anyway, probably not for you. The last few months, as we've talked about developing our budget, developing the 5-year work plan, and then substituting this concept and now department for what I was trying to put together to fill sidewalk gaps. One of the things that I remember having been said several times was that we would be able to do it from within. And that to me indicated we wouldn't have to hire a bunch of new people. So my question, and I'm not against doing what's absolutely necessary to fulfill the goals that I see we should have for safety, which are not quite as glorious and grand as what this department has going to scope. Why the change? And I'd like a little bit, I know you've considered that as a group and individually, but when you come back to us for final approval, I'd really like to know what we can do without this expansion. I know we've talked many, many times over the last 4 years about certain sidewalk gap projects not being feasible because of right-of-way. Okay, we can probably take those 5 or 6 at a time during the year, during the chip seal season, and saying, okay, we're going here to do this anyway. Now we need one of our right-of-way agents, whether it's a brand new one or one of our seasoned veterans, to go in and make sure we have the right-of-way to accomplish what we need to do that season for chip sealing. I just don't understand yet why that will require a new employee for that. So, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Goldthorpe. We'd be happy to get some particulars about what we should be expecting in terms of, in addition to what we currently already are doing with the staff we have. Sounds good. Commissioner Gold, did you have anything?
No.
Okay.
Nothing additional. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson?
Always have a little something.
No.
No.
Color be shocked.
Thanks, Ryan. You know, I just take a different approach. You know, we're a public agency. We're in charge of taking a public asset, the right of way. And my view is always take care of what you have, make it work better for everybody before you start adding more public obligations. Of course, we do have the tool of impact fees. We can continue to keep adding. We actually don't measure and say, well, by buying more property or condemning more property to add more capacity, we've reduced congestion. Actually, we say, well, we're going to project a certain level of service, but you know, we continue to add, but we haven't done. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to take current assets. And I really appreciate that this is now moved towards, okay, you know, we're building out this county and we're an urban county, but we have a whole lot of public assets that are not working for everybody. And when they're not, and we have a tool, a measurement. You were a leader in getting us a measurement tool that actually helps us quantify why people avoid an area because of level of service or level of stress, traffic stress. And so those tools are used to tell us. And now the logical is, okay, rather than thinking about building a big capital project, how do we bring level of stress from 3 to 2 or 2 to 1 so that more people will be there, and the rapid implementation. So we have these tools. We want to make the right of way work for everybody, and people aren't stupid. They will avoid unsafe places if they're on their walking or on their biking. Sometimes they'll make a mistake, And they don't get a shy distance like we give people who have in vehicles, and I appreciate that. So I want to just keep seeing how we measure and what our tools are. What are the tools that are telling us that this area with these resources, we can move from LTS 4 to LTS 2, and because we have an example over here when we invested, even with temporary, there was more activity, the property values went up, the safety went up, more kids were walking to school and instead of getting driven to school. So those sorts of things. With trying to help people not be injured or killed, it's often hard to prove the negative, right? It's like, look, we haven't had this many deaths or injuries this year. And so, but that's what your team is going to try and do, and to come back to us, because we're supposed to be managing this $3 billion or $4 billion worth of public assets in a way that keeps working better and better and better for people. And a key component of why people will stay, will use it more, and will use it in all ways is whether they perceive it as safe. And we now know there are models, and frankly, the more examples we're getting, and we got some great ones in Southeast Boise after the chip seal, of actually making things work a little bit better for all people, drivers, cyclists, walkers. There are people coming to us saying, that's what I want in my neighborhood too. And so you need this team, some team, whether we take it from another department or we find additional resources, we can figure that one out. But we do need a team to say, okay, how do we then deal with that? Because we're getting more people are going to say, I want to live as safely in my neighborhood as those folks across town are. And I see part of the reason why they're walking and biking more, there's less, people driving their kids to school, is because you've invested these things in that neighborhood. I want it invested in mine. And so I really like the way that you're understanding this isn't just about building more stuff, spending the taxpayers' dollars to buy more stuff and build more stuff. It's about using the taxpayers' dollars very strategically to take the assets they already own and entrust with us and make them work better for more people into the future. And I really appreciate that. So I look forward to more details on how it gets financed in the short term, but I do also, I'm excited that there'll be more and more examples of like temporary installations and so forth going in, more creative ways of using our consultants. That's another aspect I really appreciate that you and Justin are doing, because the consultants are working with people all over the country and they're saying, this might work here, and this, instead of us telling them what to do, they're suggesting this might be a good idea. So there's some creativity that I assume is being worked into this safety team. Thank you.
Ryan, can you remind us, so when do you want to be back before us with these details?
Madam President, the date we gave was next week.
Do you need more time?
We can come back whenever you would prefer. We can do it in 2 weeks so that we can come up with some additional information.
Yeah, why don't we do 2 weeks? And if you have any additional questions that you didn't ask during this work session, feel free to send them along to staff. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right, thanks all.